What in the hell is going on in college football, people? Talk to me. The NCAA lands court win. This extra year 2022 athletes pause. Thank you, Lord. Guys, I don't know how you guys feel about this this noise that's come out in the last 48, 72 hours about the 2022 athletes trying to come back and get that fifth year of eligibility. I'm going to give you my point of view here real quick before we dive into the show. I'm against it. I don't like it. I feel as, when you go pro, that's it. You're off the books. You're off the NCAA books, So, I'm in full agreement with what the NCAA just did. I'm going to read it to you here. The 10th Circuit Court has paused the injunction granting class of 2022 athletes a fifth year of eligibility, limiting access to extra seasons just days before college kicks off. Folks, again, I wasn't with it. I'm glad they ruled against it. I know there are coaches out there that are actually trying to defy, this decision by the NCAA. Good luck to you. But there's a lot of power in the NCAA if you know anything about the NCAA. But I'm not for it, folks. I'm totally against it. You go pro, male or female. That's it. There's no fifth year. I'm not a fan of the play for five rule as it is. I think 4 years is all you need. You need 4 years with the NIL and the money today going around in college football. I think this has a lot to do with it. But if you follow college sports as I do, folks, the landscape has completely changed. So again, I'm glad the NCAA stood firm on their decision, and hopefully we don't see this overturned, here in the next days to come. Folks, we saw a good one this week. We had a lot of games paused. Hopefully everybody got out to go see their teams play this weekend. We saw a great one. Our game of the week, we're going to be bringing that to you here shortly. Our game of the week was Harlem over Belvedere over at Harlem. That was a great game. There were other blockbuster games throughout the Nick 10 that went on Friday night. It was one game in particular. They got pushed to Saturday, and that was Boylan Guilford. We're going to be talking about that game here shortly. Guys, tonight we got a lineup tonight. Folks, don't touch that dial. This is going to be an action-packed night. Folks, let's get ready to go for the Bailey Pod. Don't touch that dial. It's hot. This show is hot tonight. We got some good stuff coming tonight. We got Coach Casazza of Jefferson High School. They go over to Auburn this past weekend and beat up on Auburn. Congrats to Jefferson. He's in the building, folks. We got an action-packed one tonight. Let's get ready for the Bailey Pod. Hey, folks, welcome to another great edition of the Bailey Pod. Guys, before we dive into the show, as I always do each and every week when we bring this show to you, I want to stop, pause, and thank those who have gone and subscribed and liked the Bailey Pod. It definitely means a lot to us. We're going to keep coming, keep serving. You keep coming, we keep serving. It's just that type of relationship. Keep doing it. Keep subscribing. Keep liking. We love it. We appreciate your support. We're going to continue to bring you great Nick 10 content week in and week out. We're going to try to bring you some other things as well coming up in the show here in the next weeks to come. So, guys, it's going to be an action-packed one tonight. Don't touch that dial. Again, like I just stated in my opening, we got Coach Casazza. He's in the building. He's in the back waiting to come on. Guys, before we get rock and rolling in the show, I'm going to go ahead and bring on my main man, Harold Bone. He's been a great contributor here on the Bailey Pod week in and week out. Harold Bone, how you doing, my man?
How you doing, man? Happy week number 2 in the land of football. I can't wait to get underway. Hopefully this week is not as crazy as last Friday night with all the lightning and the rain and everything in the area. Hopefully it's a little bit more calm. I'm going to blame that on the early season kickoff. That we're not going to get into that on the show today, but that weather last Friday. I know I was over at the Belvedere Hano game, and that was almost a 2-hour delay there because of the lightning, which I'm completely fine with. Let's be safe. Let's the players, let them be safe, and they did a great job. Both athletic directors and both schools did a great job getting things going there. So, and once we got things kicked off, it was a great Friday night of football.
Absolutely. Agreed. Yeah. We were over, Scott and I were over at Harlem watching North get devoured by Harlem. And that was about a two and a half hour delay, but I'm glad that teams were able to actually get on the field and play Friday night. You know, I know there was Boylan, and I believe Boylan and Guilford had to move their game to Saturday. So it was a fun night. It was a fun night. I know you were over at the Belvedere and the Hononegah game. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I was over at Thunderbird Stadium. I was there on Friday night and saw that one and that opener there. It was what you kind of thought it would be, a slugfest between two teams that, you know, maybe they don't have the elite talent in the conference, but they got a couple of real nice players, played some good solid defense, and I think Belvedere's got a shot at I think they can match last year's record, maybe get one more. They're a good football team. They fought hard. They played really tough. They came out in a triple option, which was different than they have the previous years. I think that stunned Hononegah a little bit. And I think they got some things up their sleeves. Their passing game needs to continue to develop, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, and folks, we're going to highlight all those games that went on last weekend, and we're going to go over our Bailey Pod top performers of Week 1, also too in the show tonight. As I mentioned earlier, Coach Casazza is in the building. He's going to be joining us shortly, and then also too, we're going to actually highlight games for next week, Week 2. We're going to take a look at Week 2, look at matchups, talk about matchups a little bit. But we're going to go ahead and get right into the meats and potatoes of the show. I know this coach here, he's got a lot going on, got a lot on his plate. We're going to go ahead and bring in Coach Casazza. Coach Casazza from Jefferson, he's waiting back in the room. We're going to go ahead and bring him on. He had a great outing. His coaches had a great outing this past weekend over at Auburn. They beat up on the Knights pretty well. But we're going to go ahead and bring Coach Casazza in. Coach, how you doing, man? Coach, how you doing? You with us?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
There we go, Coach. Yep, we can hear you loud and clear. Coach, hey, thanks for joining the Bailey Pod on this Thursday night. We appreciate your time. I know you got a lot going on. But, Coach, we want to just congratulate you on the big victory over Auburn last weekend. You guys beat up on the Knights pretty well. Coach, can you talk to us a little bit about, how you guys came out and you guys were able to put up the type of performance that you guys put up against the Knights?
It's just, the credit goes to the kids, like it's always going to go when we have a successful night. A lot of things we still need to work on. I mean, we played a pretty sloppy game. I would say the majority of our varsity team is sophomores and juniors, so we're young and we've got some growing and learning to do. And the good thing about Friday night is we had a lot of teach tape and opportunities to learn things that we needed to fix.
Coach, talk a little bit about some of the things that you'd like to do this year. I know last year you guys went to the playoffs. You got that 33-year drought out of your mouth. What are some things that you've learned over the last 8 or 9 months that's going to allow you guys to actually continue to keep your foot on the accelerator and put some W's up in that column?
Yeah, as cliche as it might sound, the cliches are cliches for a reason. Is here at Jefferson, man, it's one day after the next. It's 1 foot after the other, and we got a lot of things we got to continually work on here. In Rockford, we've got a really high mobility rate. Kids are moving all the time. Kids are coming and going from your program. So for us, it's really we don't like to look too far ahead because you never kind of know what's going to happen. So. We take the kids we got every day, and we've got a really great group of them. And it's what do we need to work on today to prepare for tomorrow?
Sure.
We try not to look too far down the road. And really, we just want to continue to harp on the expectations and standards we set, and then that's really our goal.
Coach, you guys lost a lot of seniors this past year. What are some of the things that you've said to the guys, some of the younger guys that are coming up, and some of the seniors, guys that are seniors now? And I'm pretty sure these seniors that are the current seniors today learn from those guys who just graduated in 2026. What are some of the things that the older guys that just graduated left behind with these young guys?
Man, that was such a special class. From the guys that had been here from, my first year here, we had about 35 guys on the team. So all of those guys that were sophomores that year, they all had to start on varsity. We had a really small team. So those guys that stuck it out, and then we had a couple of those key transfers, Julius Holt, Jaden Williams, that really brought a rock solid foundation of leadership to our program that we needed. And that's so invaluable what those two brought, because the kids at our school and our program needed to see how to lead as a player. They needed to learn how to be locker room leaders. So I'm so thankful that those guys came through our program and were able to teach that to these kids, because there's a lot of them that have stepped up and have started to fill those roles that Jaden and Julius brought to us.
Yeah, Coach, great win last Friday night, and hope you and the family are doing well. I know when I saw you over the winter, you talked about stacking days, and you had good attendance in the weight room, and you could see that on Friday night, the film I watched. You guys, one of the things that I made note of is you guys did a really good job defensively getting 11 guys to the ball, and you had 2 pick sixes in the game, which was super impressive. Most impressive thing to me in that game, though, was when you got the pick six, you didn't get a single penalty. I don't know if you guys teach that, but that is really impressive on the high school level to have 2 pick sixes and not a single penalty. So whoever's teaching that return drill when you get a pick and taking it to the house, great job by you guys. Is that something that you talk about, is getting turnovers and returning them to the house?
Yeah, so by trait and nature, I'm a defensive guy. I love defensive football. I call our defense and I've got a really good assistant coach, Brian Moorhead, who does my linebackers and helps out with getting our game plan ready for defense. Turnovers and tackling are the 2 things we harp every single day. And that starts with our pursuit, and that's 11 guys getting to the football. And that's every drill we do. Once you touch the field for practice, there's no more walking. You better be running everywhere we go. And in fact, tonight I kicked the whole team out of practice a little bit early because it just wasn't up to our standard. And they needed a little reset. So that's something we teach, and it's something we teach in everything we do. If we're in the weight room training and they need to go get a drink of water, well, their tails better not be walking to go get that water. They better, find some hustle. And that's just the stuff that's going to translate to the field and translate to those turnovers and those drills, and getting the fumble recoveries. Is you need as many hats to the football as possible. We all know that. That's a cliche football teaching point. But if you don't actually teach it and you don't hold that standard every day, then the kids are going to have a hard time seeing the benefits of it.
Yep. Well, you definitely saw it last Friday night for sure.
Coach, you held Auburn to 22 yards total, I believe. Can you talk to us a little bit about that's pretty impressive. I just want to highlight that and talk a little bit about that for a second here. I mean, 22 total yards allowed, 47 passing, minus 25 yards rushing, 8 turnovers. I mean, Coach, that's a pretty good night at the office. Can you speak to that? I mean, how proud of you are your defense, at this time of the year? I know it's only week 1. You guys probably made some mistakes, went back on Sunday or Monday and corrected those mistakes so you won't come back out in week 2. People don't see those mistakes. But speak to us a little bit about your defense, because, again, with looking at these stats, someone that knows football would probably say, wow, they must have a really damn good defense.
Yeah, it's the things we harp, it's the simple things. Our defense is not incredibly complicated, and it's designed that way for a reason, because we want them to play confidently and play fast. We made some switches, probably not last year, the season before, maybe about week 6 or 7. We really found a way to simplify some things. And, last year our defense gave up something like 14 points a game or something, and that really helped our our season last year, and something we continue to heart. It's our kids do a really good job of doing what we ask them to do, and it's not fun. Nobody enjoys doing a tackling circuit every day. Nobody enjoys being the tackling dummy when it's your turn to go through, but They do it. And most days they do it without a complaint, and they know it needs to be done, because now that we do it and we've seen some success, they see the benefit of it.
Coach, also too, what did you guys learn from week one? I know a lot of coaches try to learn and take things and grow from one game 1 week to the next, but what would be a couple things that you guys think that you learned from week one that's going to allow you guys again to get better each and every week?
Yeah, we saw a lot of good things. The resilience was part of it. That was a game where the lightning delay, we didn't kick off till about 8:30. We had a little clock malfunction, so our whole first quarter was a 15-minute first quarter, and there was a lot of penalties on both sides of the ball. The one thing that really I was proud of, and I seen with this team that we can grow from, is our kids, they didn't blink, they didn't freak out, they didn't overreact to the penalties. They really had that next play mentality ready to go. The other thing that we saw that they took all the stuff we taught them in practice, our scouting, our game planning, formation recognition, communication, and that showed on the field Friday, which was evident by our defense. So those are things we learned, and then of course we learned a lot of the things that we needed to as a young football team. We had a couple blocking in the backs on a kickoff return. We returned for a touchdown that got called back because we blocked in the back. And that happened on maybe one or two other plays. So it was an opportunity to teach our kids, things not to do. Like if the ball carries in front of you and this kid doesn't have a chance of making the play, then we just got to let him go. I appreciate the effort, but that's just learning football. And these guys were all JV kids last year that are learning how to be varsity football players.
Yeah, Coach. One of the players that I want to talk about is Alejandro. Is it Villa? And I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. Your quarterback.
Yep, Alejandro Villa Almanasi.
Oh, and he's a two-way player.
Coach, hold on here. Spell that, Coach. Alejandro.
Now that's a teacher right there. That's a teacher right there.
Yeah. There you go. ALMON. ALMONACI.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not a spelling bee guy, man. I got to write things down to spell it, man.
Right. I hear you.
Man, we're there with you, Coach. I was really impressed with him. I thought he played really well. I don't know if this was his first playing time at the varsity level. I thought he played really well. You got a couple of really nice wide receivers out there in Turner and Harris. That's something a little bit different than you guys have had the last couple of years. I think a dynamic passing game. Is that something you talked about during the offseason, maybe in 7-on-7 or some other things like that? Can you talk about kind of your passing game developing?
Yeah, it's a development, and just kind of based off kind of what our player personnel is. The last 3 years I've been here, we've been really big, strong, and stout on the offensive line, and we've had some good backs. And we've not been as fast or skillful on the perimeter. So, our game was based around the power run game. And, now our personnel is kind of switching a little bit. We're getting a little bit smaller and feistier on the O-line, and we're getting a little faster and more skillful out there on our perimeter. So, it's just adapting our scheme to what we have here and what's going to put our kids in the best position to have some success out there.
Sure.
Coach, talk to us a little bit about your receiver core. You just alluded to the receivers that you guys have this year. What do they give you guys offensively? I know you just mentioned, what they give you on the perimeter, but are they a deep threat as well? Are we going to see more of deep ball, see more deep balls this year from Jefferson?
Not giving too much away. Our guys. We have the ability to stretch the field on all three levels, the deep, the intermediate, and the short game. We've got some really smart high-end kids that have, that are juniors that already have 2 years of starting at the varsity level and playing. And Alejandro was with us last year. He came to us from Guilford, and I believe he played quarterback at Guilford his freshman year. Last year, in my opinion, he was the best outside backer in our conference last year. Others might disagree with that, but he is a playmaker, and he does have a playmaking gene about him. I'm really proud of the way he's kind of grown up this summer. He's definitely got a little bit more to do, but he's come a really long way. And we're excited to see what he can do and help our football team in that way. But he played a very unselfish brand of football Friday night, and we're excited to see that.
Coach, I'm going to move forward just a little bit. I'm going to talk to you about the up and coming week. Looks like you guys are at home against East. East coming off a sour loss against Freeport, 28-zip last weekend at home at their school, actually. What are some of the things that you guys want to be able to try to just come out and do, again, without giving too much, but, what has practice been like this week as you guys prepare for the E-Rabs?
Yeah. The thing you're going to get with East all the time, and I really admire it. Coach Griffin he's done a phenomenal job since he's been there with this aspect is when you play East High, man, you better bring your lunch pail because they are a physical group of kids, man. And that's a mentality that starts with the coaches over there. You're gonna our kids. One thing we talk about, you got to be prepared, man. You got to be the aggressor. You got to throw some punches in there. Figuratively, not literally, because those East kids, man, they play tough, physical brand of football, and it's always a challenge. You're not going to get many possessions to have the ball because they're gonna hold that ball and run it and drain the clock and run it again and drain the clock and run it again. And they run tough and their offensive line's physical. So, that's things we've worked on all week. And we don't get too far out of what we want to do. Our keys to victory don't change too much. And one thing I want to emulate with our team that Coach Griffin's been able to do is I want every team we play to say, damn, we had to play Jefferson. We're beat up. They brought it to us.
Right.
I want
dogfight.
We've got the South Side kids of Rockford, and those are some tough kids. They always have been, always will be, and that's the mentality we want to bring to the field. So, with East High, we've got to really prepare for that and try to outmatch their physicality.
Coach, you punch a ticket to the IHSA playoffs last year. You guys bowed out in the first round of Brother Rice. What's the tempo, the conversation? Let me rephrase that. What's the conversation been, throughout these last 8 or 9 months for these kids that you have now as you guys walk into week 2? What has that been like? Because again, it's a new crop of group that you actually have right now. Those seniors left. What have you been telling these kids about? What it really takes to actually be a true playoff contender. Because I'm pretty sure some of the kids that you have in your program this year, they may have gone over the dress against Brother Rice. I don't know how many kids you took over the dress, but what has the conversation been like with those kids?
Yeah, playing Brother Rice, and that was they're a dang good football program. They're one of the best in the state. Maybe one, last year's team, maybe they were one of the best in the country. They were a really good football team, and just seeing how their players were physically put together is huge for our kids, right? Because, our kids, they're really hardworking. And since I've been here, our weight room numbers, great. We go all year. They don't have a choice with me because that goes back to the mentality of who we want to be. But it's a different shift in, you got to do more than just lift weights. You got to lift weights with an intention. You've got to, you can't just go and eat Takis for lunch with a soda. You've got to eat some protein. You got to eat your carbs. You got to eat throughout the day, and seeing how their bodies are physically put together and what it takes to be that level of a football player as a whole, that was huge for our kids. As far as building off last year, the message I've given our kids since the Monday we started our weights after that game is you got to burn the bridge from last year. That last year Jefferson team will never play another snap. They're a thing of Jayhawk past, a thing of Nick 10 past, and we've got to find a way to forge our own path to get there because we're a different football team. We've got different skill sets. We've got different strengths, weaknesses. I think the buy-in is more than what it has been since I've been here. Every year it's grown a little bit. That core nucleus, maybe it started as 5 kids that first year and 15, 20 kids the next year, 30 kids last year. And, we probably had 45 kids in the weight room every day this off season. And
Nice.
They're bought in. It's finding a new path. They're young, they're puppies. But they're eager, they're hungry, they're tough, they show up, they deal with me, and I'm a little bit of a nutcase sometimes out there. And like I kicked them out of practice today. They're going to show back up tomorrow and ready to go and prove me wrong of why I kicked them out, and that's what we needed. So we're excited about this group, but we don't want to live in the past. The most dangerous phrase in the human language is, in the past or the way we've always done it, and we want to make sure we don't fall victim to that here.
Coach, my last question real quick is, with your guys' success as the football program, what have you seen that do for the rest of the school and the students attending not only the football games, but the basketball games, the volleyball games, the rest of the athletic program, and all the events at the school? What do you think that's done? And I ask you that question because I know that you're an intelligent man who can see more than just football.
Yeah. It's huge. And our kids play so many different sports. Like we've got a huge population of basketball players that play football. Our track team has seen a big success in the last couple of years, especially with Gennardi, who is a freaking stud out there. And we're so excited to see what he's going to do. But we also got a great athletic director who really harps and puts a lot of investment into kids going to other games. We give out something we call game day gold. So if a kid shows up to another team sporting event wearing their Jefferson gear, they get some sort of monetary value that they can spend at concession stands or on games, clothing for the school store and all kinds of things. And it's something we've preached. But, everybody knows that, football is a big deal and everybody wants a good football team because it bleeds success into all your other programs because football is what kicks off your year.
Right.
Everybody's excited for the first Friday night football game. It's the first thing that happens in the season. And, it's such a large team, generally you're around 100 kids, hopefully. And those kids are all going to go play multiple sports. And, when you have success, those kids know how to bring it to these other sports, kind of like Julius and Jaden brought to us last season from being in playoff teams the year before.
Yeah. Thanks for that answer, Coach. I knew I could ask you that and get that exact information.
Yeah.
Coach, my last question as well, again, I'm just looking at the success that you've had in the last, this is your 4th year as the head coach over there at Jefferson. Is that accurate?
Yep. This is my 4th season.
4th season. How good do you really feel? I know you felt good about last year's team. How good do you really feel about this year's team that you have?
Yeah. Each week's going to be a new thing. I think our conference is very interesting this year. I think the conference is more even than it's been in a long time. I don't think there's a huge gap between most teams. Harlem proved to be pretty good Friday night, which, they've got some really good players. Coach Morrow's done a really good job for a really long time in this conference. Belvedere North's always going to be a tough out. Coach Beck, Coach Fagan, they do a great job over there. And we've got a lot of really good coaches in this conference. Coach over at Belvedere, look what he's done to their program over there, reviving what they've got.
Yeah.
That's incredible. He's done Coach Donnelly's done such a good job over there getting those kids bought in and believing. Josh Starncrest, the AD, they've done a really nice job. I think our conference is even. So each week's its own thing. We've got our hands full this week with East High School, who, we're hoping we can get our stuff together here and get a game plan and get our kids prepared well enough to go over there, feel confident to play East High,
sure,
and hopefully get us, our second win of the season to get ready for a really good Hononegah football team in week 3. So, I think we can, to answer your question, I think we can be as good as our kids are willing to work for. You know, and the battle of attrition sets in eventually. Being in school presents new challenges. You know, there's distractions everywhere, and you know that's our job as coaches to help them navigate that and help them prioritize.
Right.
You know, and that's probably a bigger portion of our job than drawing up the X's and O's and how we're going to scheme for East offense or defense or how we plan to slow down Harlem or whatever. You know, it's
right.
We got to teach these guys to manage their life outside of football because that's going to be the majority of their life.
Agreed, Coach. Well, Coach, hey, we know you got things to get to. We appreciate your time. We'd love to have you on again sooner than later down the road. Good luck this year, man. I'm rooting for you. And good luck. Stay healthy. And good luck the rest of the way.
Thank you guys for what you do. Thanks for putting a spotlight on these kids. I know our kids appreciate it. And, you know, I look forward to seeing you guys again.
Absolutely.
Talk to you soon, Coach.
Thank
Coach Casazza, everybody, Jefferson High School head coach. Thanks, Coach. Yeah, Harold. Coach Casazza, he's done a really superb job. You know, over there at Jefferson, I like talking to him every time he jumps on the pod with us. I see him in public at events, and we just have a really good conversation. Never a dull moment with that young man. He's gonna really. He's already turned that program around. It's going in the right direction. He's done a lot of good things since he's been there. Kids love him. You know, you're gonna see Jefferson continue to climb through the ranks of our conference, I think, in the years to come, as long as he remains a Jayhawk over there.
Yeah, I can't say enough great things about Kaz. I've seen him out in public. I've seen his the alumni out with him. I've seen him out and about, and I've talked to a couple of his former players. They couldn't have spoken more highly of him. He's making an impact in the football program for sure, but he's making such a huge impact in Jayhawk community, the whole community. I would say, you know, if you go to a football game and you're a Jefferson fan, that's great. But go to another sporting event and look at the number of kids from the football team attending the other events. Yeah. He talked about the athletic director doing a great job over there, but you see Kaz at a lot of those other events and his assistant coaches at other events. They understand what the whole community of Jefferson needs to be. And that's something that I think sometimes gets lost when you hire a coach, understanding how to build the culture of the whole athletic program. And we don't think about it so much maybe on the high school level as we do on the college level, but really you have to do that. You have to build that community up so that when Kaz sees a kid in the hallway who might be a football player, he can then go up to him and say, hey, why aren't you playing football? Or why aren't you going to the weight room? Or what's the deal with your grades? You can have those conversations, right? Because he built up that credibility. Like that's something that I think Kaz does a really good job over there at Jefferson. Really good. Really
and you know, smart guy. I mean, he surrounds himself around really good coaches. Coach Moorhead, who's over there now, he's an ex-Freeport coach. You know, he's over there at Jefferson now. Again, talked about him, you know, just being that good linebacker coach. And, you know, they all have a great amount of respect for each other. And I think that's one reason why he's having so much success these last few years. He's been, you know, running that program over there is because, you know, he understands that, hey, I'm only going to be as successful as my assistant coaches. You know, the better assistant coaches I can get in, the better head coach I'm going to become. And I think he understands that. And I think that's why we continue to talk about him in the fashion that we've been talking about him the last few years.
Yep, and that's why they continue to move up in the conference standings, right? And they get higher and higher and higher. Our preseason predictions, you know, the way they finished last year, getting to the playoffs, they're going to be in the running. The way the current playoff system goes, I'm going to be shocked if they're not in the playoffs. And then if it continues on, I expect them to continue to grow, get bigger and bigger kids, stronger kids, faster kids, going to Brother Rice, learning from there. You know, he talked about it in the interview.
Right. And you know, Harold, you know, I mean, you know this, and viewers may know it as well, but I'll voice it publicly. You know, Jefferson's always had really good athletes. You know, that's no secret. You know, I think, you know, over the last, you know, 20 or 30 years, you just haven't had, you know, they've had some good coaches to come through, but I think what he's doing is a little different from what some of the other coaches have done. He's connecting with the kids, connecting with the parents, which I think is vital as a head coach to be able to put a program together. Because my thing is it's always going to start with the parents, because if you can get the parents buying, you're probably going to get the kids buying. I think he's doing a great job of that, and I think that's part of his reasoning. One of his reasonings why he's having such great success over there at Jefferson.
Yeah, and I like the fact that he comes from a defensive background, and he's sticking with that. Sometimes you'll see coaches kind of move away from that because they feel like they need to be more the CEO. Kaz is not like that. He's getting his hands dirty in the preparation. He calls the defensive signals on Friday nights. So, and he knows those kids. He understands them. He knows their strength. He knows their weaknesses. He knows what they can do, what they can't do. I just like everything about Kaz and the Jefferson program. I think they're a shining star in the NIC 10 for sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and they get ready for the E-Rabs this weekend, so that ought to be a good game. But they took care of business in week 1. So, folks, Jefferson now 1-0 in the NIC 10. They move on to East, play East this weekend. They play the E-Rabs this weekend. Good luck, Jefferson. Good luck to East as well. Harold, I want to actually get to our quick take. We had a couple games that you and I attended. I attended the Harlem and the Belvedere North game, and I just want to give you my quick take from that game, and I'll allow you to give your quick take from the Belvedere and Belvedere and Hononegah game. But I'm going to go ahead and start with that Harlem and Belvedere North game. I just want people to know that Belvedere North is not out of the conversation. I think you would agree, Harold. I just think what happened over there on Friday night, they ran into a better team. Harlem was the better team that night. Harlem came out. They executed well on both sides of the ball. Good coaching on both sides of the ball by their D coordinator and Coach Morrow, who calls the offense. I thought, there was great communication on the field amongst the players. And so, like what I saw with Belvedere North, I saw a lot of lack of communication in the first half, where Coach Beck had to burn a couple timeouts for whatever reason. It looked like some guys that were lining up incorrectly. Which to me was really uncharacteristic of Belvedere North, because if anybody knows anything about Belvedere North lines up and they're ready to play. You don't usually see that. So I'm not sure what's going on over there at Belvedere North. I really do believe that they just had a bad game, folks. I don't think they're out of the conversation. I still think they're one of the top 3 teams within our conference, and I don't think we need to write them off. I think Belvedere North is going to surprise somebody. They play Guilford, this coming up weekend. Not saying they're going to beat Guilford, but I think it's going to be a really well-fought game. I think, they probably learned a lot from this game against Harlem. You can't take anything away from Harlem. Harlem's a damn good football team this year. They have a bevy of playmakers on both sides of the ball. They're going to give teams fits this year on offense. I think defense is where their big question marks lie, to be honest with you. Yes, they played Belvedere North well. They were able to stop that dominant run game that Belvedere North's always actually displayed each and every year. But, there's no secret. Belvedere North is not as talented this year as they have been in the last 3 to 4 years with Booker, Roman, Bucci, Alexander, and the crew. So, when those types of bevy of playmakers leave your program, you have to have the next crop of kids ready to come up and not really fill those shoes, because the guys that I just alluded to, it's going to be hard to fill those shoes, but you got to have guys that are ready to play. And again, that's my take from the Belvedere North and Harlem game. Again, congratulations, Harlem. They showed out. I said on WTVO on the overtime the other night, Harlem came out and they put the league on notice. Putting up that type of points, 54 points. Holding Belvedere North to only 14 points, you got to say, hey, that was a damn good night at the office. So congrats to Harlem. But again, as it pertains to Belvedere North, they're not out of the conversation, folks.
Yeah. So Tim, I didn't, as you mentioned, I didn't attend that game, but I watched the game. I watched the film. The thing that was screaming out at me as I watched that game is explosive plays for Harlem all over the field, wide receivers, running backs. On defense, they made explosive plays. They just have talent at every level of offense and defense. Their offense did an incredibly good job of keeping Fawcett from getting sacked and getting hit all that often. It allowed him to get the ball to LeBron McClellan for, 113 yards. He had 7 catches. Cook had a nice game, but not an outstanding game, and he didn't need to. That's how impressive they were.
Yeah.
That was a big one there.
And Harold, as I alluded, just as I didn't mean to interrupt it, but I just alluded to a second ago. When you have playmakers, a bevy of playmakers like that, one guy can have an off night, but the other guys can't have an off night. And I'm not saying Cook had an off night, but I just don't think it was just Cook's night for offense that night. He did a phenomenal job on defense, covering in the secondary, coming up and plugging up the run. But when you have a bevy of playmakers like that, in the backfield, you got a bevy of playmakers at the receivers positions, and you have a really good offensive line. That again, you just alluded to. They kept Fawcett upright. I really didn't see Fawcett on the ground at all Friday night, and you got to give kudos to their offensive line. So when you have a bevy of playmakers like that on offense, everybody is not going to be hot that same night. We understand that. That's just the game of football. LeBron James and his crew, everybody's not hot on the same night. There's times when LeBron's not hot, somebody else has to step up. So I think we're going to see that, with Harlem. McClellan may have a quiet night, but can Cook step up? Can Foster step up? This other young man, Duncan, can he step up? So you can. That's a good problem to have, because that if one guy's not having a good night, you got 4 or 5 other playmakers that can actually step up and give you that offensive power.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, with Belvedere North, I think we saw what they were missing, right? They were missing the power game in the middle of the field with Roman, like last few years, right? And then they missed the ultimate weapon on the outside, Booker, who could take it to the house at any point. So you had to play honest. Harlem did not need to play honest on the outside because they weren't afraid of the speed that was going to get by them. Right. That's a concern for me as a fan watching North. Where are they going to get that weapon on the outside to at least give the threat of hitting a home run play? If you don't have that, everybody can collapse inside and you don't have to worry about it. That has to be a developing piece for North this year if they're going to compete at the top of the conference. Because I think more and more teams are just going to continue to collapse on the inside running game. And then you have 11 guys in a short box. What are they going to do? They're not known to pass over the top.
Right.
I think that's a very interesting story moving forward for North. What's going to happen? Now, is it because Harlem is so talented that it kind of looks like that? It could be. It'll be interesting this week against Guilford. What a tough way to open up the season for North. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And again, right. And as I alluded to a second ago, that's not viewers. We're not counting Belvedere North out. We're just stating the facts is that, they don't have the playmakers that they're accustomed to having these last 3 years. They just don't have it. And what I think what they're going to have to do, they're going to have to find some playmakers here in this next, 72 plus hours, because again, you go into Guilford Stadium Friday night and play like you played last Friday night against Harlem. You could be looking at an 0-2 start, and Belvedere North hasn't seen that in quite some time.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you mentioned, maybe the operation wasn't as smooth as it had been the previous years. We got to remember that was a big senior class that they lost, and a lot of the younger kids playing their first varsity game against a really good team. Things are going to happen. You're not used to going from JV to varsity. Anyone who's ever done any sport, high school, understands that's a humongous leap. Right. And I think that'll get better as the year goes on, because Coach Beck and his staff, they'll talk about it. They'll go through it. They'll rep it every day in practice. They will get that. Ball handling into the back will get better. The trickery of the offense will get better. So we'll see a lot of success with North. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the explosive plays we're not going to see out of North this year, and I think we're going to see them struggle at times to score enough points to win games. Right. I just think we're going to see that. They're still going to win their share of games. They'll qualify for the playoffs. I'm quite confident of that.
Absolutely.
But I think they are going to struggle at times this year because they don't have some of the pieces they need to run that offense like they have the last few years. Yeah. We knew that coming in, though. We knew that coming in.
And Harold, just to cap on it just a little bit further, they just didn't have that team speed. I didn't see that that burst. I didn't see that next level gear from their backs. The young man McElroy, he can only do what he can do. I mean, he's going both ways, so he's got to be in the best shape of his life. But how much more do you want to continue to run him and have him play defense? Run him and have him play defense, and by mid-season the kid could be burned out. So you got to be mindful and say to yourself, is that okay? Do we need to find substitute him more on offense? Do we need to play him more on offense? Or do we need to play him less on defense or more on defense? But if you ask me the question, I think where the kid shines on both sides of the ball. I'm just talking about by the time he gets to midseason, how much wear and tear is going to be on his body. That's the big question. Because right now, because right now, in my estimation, he's their biggest threat. He's their biggest threat. It looked like he shed some body fat, dropped some weight. So he's looked like he's got another gear. But again, now you're playing on both sides of the ball. They're playing him at the inside linebacker. Again, he's playing that fullback position. And that's a very tough physical position to play. Sometimes he may not get the ball. He's blocking. When he's getting the ball, he may get hit. So again, I'm just talking about the contact that he's having each and every play. Can this young man sustain a healthy season, which I hope he can sustain a healthy season and be that go-to guy that they're going to need him to be, in these 8 to 9 to 10 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting thing to see his health. If they can find some more playmakers, because I know they're deep enough. They got enough kids in their program. I wouldn't be surprised if this week's they do some changes, put some guys in positions maybe they didn't play in the first week, just to see if there's something there, a spark, something to give them more time. They might. I don't think they're going to pull him from defense. I think they might give him a little bit more rest on the offensive side because that's just kind of the way their offense is. I think defensively he'll probably play all season long because they did that with Roman a little bit his junior year. I know they pulled him a little bit from the offensive side to give him more time on defense. I would expect them to do the same thing.
Harold, let's talk about the game you were at. I got a chance to get my naked eye on the film, Hononegah and Belvedere, a few nights back here. But you were there. Can you talk to me a little bit about how this game went, what you thought of both teams? I know Hononegah came out on top. They beat Belvedere 28-13. But Harold, go ahead. I'm gonna let you talk a little bit about what you saw from the Indians on Friday night.
Yeah, interesting game in that coming out of the locker room, I think Hononegah was a little bit back on their heels. I'm not sure that they were ready for the triple option offense that Belvedere came out. It was old school Belvedere football is kind of what took place on Friday to start that. So it took them a little while to get lined up defensively. Coach LeMay and his staff, they were looking at the telestrator board on the sideline, getting guys lined up. Once they got things lined up, the defense started to calm down, and some of those big plays that happened early, they kind of went away, and the defense was able to control Belvedere for the majority of the football game. Hononegah offensively, not a lot of explosive plays. Brody Stendel had 69 yards on 18 carries. So he's a workman-like running back. Great wrestler, like Kurt Smith a couple years ago, same type of player. You're gonna see that sort of thing. Through the passing game, Cacciatore didn't do a lot. He didn't need to do a lot for them to win. This quick screen here to the outside. He had that. He had a nice touchdown pass to one of his wide receivers in the corner of the end zone. It was really a slugfest between the two, and Hononegah just was able to get a couple more points on the board. And they won that one 28-13. Logan Wilson for Hononegah defensively had 7.5 tackles from his D-line position, but the way that Belvedere runs the offense, you're going to get more tackles as a defensive lineman. So that's just kind of what's going to happen. I want to point out one kid for Belvedere, though. He had a phenomenal game. Nick Alvarez, an incredible game. He had 16 rushes for 125 yards. He also had 5 receptions for 129 and a touchdown. He punted the ball twice for 36.5 yards on average, and he got 3 tackles. The only thing he didn't do was coach the football team, and that was Coach Donnelly who did that. He was all over the field. PA announcer was saying his name seemingly every play. Keep an eye on that kid. I think he's going to have a banner year, just an awesome year for Belvedere.
Sure.
He's my early season pick for most improved player.
Okay. Nice.
Again, after one game,
good looking kid. He's a good athlete. Yeah. Harold, what can we? I mean, I look when I got my naked eye on the film. I'm looking at Hananiga's offense because I'm just wondering how much more improved is their offense this year compared to last year. And I think one big question mark I think that they have on them this year is how well can that offensive line keep Cacciatore upright, because Belvedere got a lot of heat on Cacciatore, and that was my big question, like how well is their actual offensive line going to be able to keep him upright, Cacciatore that is upright this year, because again looking at what they weren't able to do last year, didn't really establish the run that well. And then, look at the game from the other day when they played Belvedere, they ran the ball fairly well. They passed a lot as well. But, if Belvedere, if Hananiga becomes a pass-happy team, do they have enough up front to protect Cacciatore when he's back there in the pocket?
So one of the things, and I'm glad you pointed that out. So the offensive line struggled on holding their blocks. Belvedere was able to play off blocks really well, get in the backfield, get to the running back quickly. So they did a good job. So you have to give credit to Belvedere there. That has to be a development and something where this offensive line needs to grow, get better, because they just didn't control a lot of the line of scrimmage. There wasn't a lot of movement from the offensive line. They created some holes that Sendell got through, but then the backer was able to play off the block and get it after a short gain. Sendell averaged 3.6 yards a gain. That's not a lot on 18 carries. But the offensive line needs to work on holding their blocks longer to allow the run game to kind of develop. Offensively, from a passing game perspective, that's something that these receivers are not, they're not anywhere in the same stratosphere as Harlem. I don't think anybody in the conference has those two kids, but I think that's something where, first of all, they have to stay healthy. They already have one kid out for the season, and they got another guy dinged up on Friday night there. So they need to stay healthy, because Cacciatore then needs to feel confident and comfortable in the pocket. Right. And you could tell Friday night he was not comfortable in the pocket. His feet were all over the place. He was kind of out of his body was going one way, feet going the other. They did the couple of quick screens there. So he built some confidence up there, but it's a work in progress, that offensive line, for holding blocks in the running game and then just getting things figured out as to who to block when on passing situations. And they need to do it starting this week. And then they definitely need to get it straightened out before they play Harlem or Guilford, because both those teams have very good defensive lines and linebackers. So that's something they definitely going to do if they're going to compete for the NIC 10 title.
Right. Yeah. With it being, Coach Zims last year, head coaching over there at Hananiga, it's going to be really interesting to see, how well they can play week in and week out, because, these kids don't want that on their watch, being a losing team, so to speak, sending their coach out like that. So, I'm not saying Hananiga is going to be a bad team. I'm just asking you the question, how much better can they be this year from last year? Obviously, they picked Cacciatore up. He transfers over to Hananiga, leaves Boylan, transfers to Hananiga. How much better are they at the quarterback position this year compared to last year?
Well, as far as the passer, they're miles ahead than they were last year. Cacciatore is just a better passer. I don't know that he's the athlete, the quarterback last year. I think that last year's athlete, which was a much better player, he just couldn't stay healthy. So the passing game should develop as long as they get that growth along the offensive line. Collins also came over from Boylan as well, and he's a little bit of a work in progress. I'm not sure if he played on the right side. That's what I had heard, but I don't remember him playing on the right side there. And they slid him over to the left. So, and just getting used to the guy you're playing against and the communication and things like that. I know he's improving. I know he improved a lot during camp. He's going to continue to do that. They were talking to him quite a bit on the sidelines. I think about some of those in-game changes that do need to occur. And if you've played in a certain style of offense in a certain way for forever, and then you only have 6 months or so to change and learn on the fly, I mean, that could be tough. So I expect Collins, who's the left tackle for them, to get better there. Their center and 2 guards played okay. Their right tackle, he wasn't pressured a lot. That was their weakest spot along the defensive line, I would say. But Cacciatore, he did about what I would expect him to do in that situation. He didn't.
Right.
He didn't do anything horrible. He didn't do anything great. Hopefully, he continues to improve, and hopefully his wide receivers stay healthy. Because if they do that, then they can improve and get better.
Right. Because it looks like they traveled to actually they play Auburn this weekend, so they play the Knights. So it's going to be interesting to see, how they continue to evolve each and every week. I think that's what I'm looking for from Hononegah before they get into the actual tough part of their schedule. Can they play with the Harlems? Can they play with the Guilfords? Can they play with the Belvedere Norths? Remains to be seen. Obviously, Belvedere is a good team. We're not dismissing Belvedere at any shape or form. But what I'm saying is that I think they beat Belvedere North beat Hononegah last year. So Hononegah went over there with an attitude. So I think they learned from last year's loss. They went in this year, got the victory. They get ready for Auburn. Auburn comes to Hononegah, Friday night. How much more improved are they going to be from last week? Is definitely something I'll be watching out for.
Yeah, and I will say this about Belvedere because I know we haven't talked about them all that much. Belvedere, they're going to be in a street fight every Friday night. That is a tough, hard-nosed football team that Coach Donnelly is building over there. He loves his kids. You can tell his kids love him. The fan support there was incredible for a team that went 4-5 last year and didn't make the playoffs. They were there in full throat. I mean, they were loud, proud. They are very happy with where their football program is going. They expect to pull off some big wins this year. That was the word that I heard was we're pulling off some big wins this year. We expect big things. They were in that game on Friday night. They just put themselves behind the 8 ball too many times, and in that offense, you can't do that. You can't put yourself at 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 11, and expect to be able to move the chains and do that. And they just couldn't do it. They made a couple of errors and turned the ball over and just couldn't put enough points on the board to get past Hononegah. But I'll say this. They're going to probably finish somewhere in the middle of the pack in the Nick 10 conference, and I think they're going to be one of the top 3 teams in the conference. Now, depending on who you think the top 3 teams are, I think they're pulling. I think they're pulling one off.
Right.
I really do.
And that's where I was going next. I was just gonna say that Hononegah and Belvedere, two good teams. We're going to be talking about these guys here in the next 7-8 weeks. I mean, we just in week 1 right now. We're just pointing out, we're just highlighting some things that we saw in week 1 that they got to get fixed right away in order for them to be able to want to compete here in this conference this year. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think they're going to be in the middle of the pack somewhere. 4 or 5, remains to be seen. But, these are 2 teams, well-coached teams, some good players on their team to where, like you said, they're able to knock off one of the top 3, not top 4 teams in the conference.
Yeah.
If they come to play. I mean, with that, if they come to play.
Yeah. And last thing I want to say regarding Hononegah and Coach Zimmerman, being that I live in the community and I kind of hear things and see things, this team understands it's Coach's last year. But Coach has made it a point to say it's not about him, it's about this team. And they understand that, and they're mature enough young men to understand that they don't want their legacy to be one of not succeeding the last year. And so they're gonna improve, they're gonna work. They have real good leaders on the team this year. Brody Sendell is one of the leaders they have on that team. Cacciatore has come over and seems like he's also turning into one of the leaders on that team, and they got some kids on the defensive side. So they're going to continue to improve, and they're going to work every day to get better. And you're going to see that maybe in small bits on Friday nights, but by the end of the year, you keep stacking those wins, you keep stacking the improvement. by the end of the year, they're going to be a lot better football team. And that's what we would both expect out of that, of a Coach Zimmerman team.
And that's all you ask for kids each and every week. Go out and be at your best. I'm pretty sure Coach Jim is voicing that to his guys. His guys, don't worry about me. Go out and be at your best. I need you guys to be able to go out and compete every night. We go out and compete, we got a chance. Harold, we're gonna go ahead and continue. Last week, Guilford beat up on Boylan pretty good last weekend, winning 43-6 in their season opener. Were you surprised at all with Guilford's showing on Saturday night?
So I had nothing to do on Saturday, and I left high school football. So I went over on Saturday, checked the game out, and the first quarter was only 7-0 Guilford, and Boylan had an opportunity to get a score. They tied it up, I believe, early in the second quarter. They missed PAT. It was 7-6. Boylan caused a turnover early in that football game. Boylan did. Coach Beard, absolutely, his game plan was spot on for his team to be in that game. Guilford they got off to a slow start. It was like they couldn't get out of first gear in the first quarter and a half. But once they got the momentum, it was all downhill from there. Boylan had nothing for him at that point. And the man who did it for them, as we'd expect it to be, Keeson Taylor. 2 touchdowns in the first half. He had 3 catches, 56 yards. But he had one of the 6 catches I've ever seen on a high school football field. Weber threw it up, and the defensive back was trying to tackle Keeson Taylor in the corner of the end zone. He was called for pass interference. And Keeson caught it with one hand. It was an incredible play. The Boylan crowd even clapped for him. I mean, it was just incredible. It was such a good play. And it flipped the whole game on its head at that point. Guilford got the momentum, they got the confidence, and then they just were rolling. And like I said, there was nothing that Boylan could do. Coach Beard, he just doesn't have enough ammo to really kind of change the momentum there. He just couldn't. Look, I really like their quarterback, though. I really like Boylan's quarterback, Mike Davenport. I think he's going to be a nice player for them this year. Yeah. He really is a nice player.
Yeah.
Yep. I really enjoyed watching him play.
Yeah, and I think, looking at, just talking about Guilford here for a second, but I think Guilford's really going to have to, Guilford's going to have to step their game up this weekend. Obviously, we know Belvedere North comes to town, but, Guilford's going to have to each and every week, step their game up. They want to continue to, keep their eye on that prize, and that is to win, the NIC 10 title. You play it, you go into Boylan's house, and you come out kind of lethargic, you struggle a little bit, and then you get hot. Against a really good team like a Belvedere North and a good team like Harlem, a good team like a Hananiga, you can't do that. So I think Guilford's going to go back, correct their mistakes, learn from it. Coach Cap's going to have his guys. I believe he's going to have them ready to go this weekend. They're at home against Belvedere North. That's going to be a really great game. And everybody needs to continue to, their stock needs to continue to raise. I think, it can't become just the Keeson Taylor show. It's got to be a concerted effort, both on offense and defense. I think you would agree, because again, guys get to, they key on Keeson. Somebody else has to step up, just like I alluded to earlier in the show about Harlem. You said Cook was kind of quiet. Okay, Cook was quiet, but LeBron was hot. So it's okay to have a quiet night as long as you can put that W up on the board and have other guys step up. And I think that's what Guilford's really going to have to do as the season progresses.
Yeah, I would expect, more and more teams to double team Keeson when he plays defense. And so then Guilford will have to move him around and they'll have to locate him and do things like that. But they definitely need some more players on the defensive side to kind of step up and make some plays.
Yep.
As that game wore on, it wasn't that other guys made plays. It's that Boylan wasn't able to take advantage of some of the opportunities that they had. Right. As I was watching the game, I didn't think they were able to take advantage of some of those. And as you mentioned, against a better team like Harlem, Hananiga, perhaps North, Jefferson, who we were talking to Coach Cos before, they have some talent. they can make Guilford pay for those mistakes and those
you
being
can't
able to make those plays. So.
You can't have the ill-advised passes. Game open up, first play of the game. Weber throws a pick. You can't. He's too. That's uncharacteristic of that young man. I don't expect him to do those things going forward. But he got that one out of his system. So hopefully, he can get hot and continue to be that quarterback I know he's capable of being. But as it pertains to what Guilford was able to do defensively, I think they dominated. Boylan had some big plays. They just didn't have enough playmakers. They made plays, but they just didn't have enough playmakers. I think if Boylan had more playmakers, a game could have actually been a little bit closer than what we actually witnessed. But I think Guilford just has to continue to play that good defense that we saw on Friday night. But again, everybody's got to elevate their game. Can Keeson Taylor take over a game? Absolutely, 100%. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that you want other guys to be able to step up, and I think if all 11 guys can step up, I think Guilford can really be that team that we're going to be talking about in Week 10, saying that, wow, Harold, Guilford's about to be a NIC 10 champ. I really do believe that. Yeah,
I think they definitely have an opportunity to do that if they continue to improve and find some more playmakers and guys who can kind of help out Keeson and Weber and a couple of those other guys. I want to point out this too. Boylan came in with a great strategy in that game. So Coach Beard, what he's doing, if you ever watch the East-E-Rabs in the NFL, they do a lot of movement and they change the formation and they change the strength of the formation. He did that early in that football game, and I think that actually confused Guilford a little bit. Now, as teams get more film on him, I think they're going to understand that. That's a little bit of what he ran at DuPage. From what I remember seeing this winter. So that's a little bit different than what most teams in the NIC 10 run. So he might have, for a few weeks here, he might have a little bit of an early strategy advantage. But what Guilford did is once they figured it out, they were all honed in and they absolutely shut it down. And that against some lesser teams in the NIC 10, that might be an advantage that Boylan has, even if they don't have enough playmakers. They might be able to strategize a couple of plays. So look for that. If you go to a game on Friday night and Boylan's there, you might think, oh, God, why would I go to them? They're very different than most teams in the conference in the way that they run their offense. I think go ahead. I was just going to say, to me, it's very interesting. I like the different types and styles of offense and defense that teams will run. I'm glad that not everyone runs the same style of offense in our conference.
Right. Yeah, and I think, as it pertains to Boylan, I think Boylan's going to get better each and every week. I don't think, they're going to learn from this game. I'm pretty sure they've learned a lot. They're going to get ready. Now they're going to get ready for Freeport. They travel to Freeport this weekend. I think they're going to give Freeport a good run for their money. I think, Boylan's a much more improved program than they were last year. I think you would agree, and a lot of others would agree as well. But, when you're playing against a good team, such as a Guilford, you have to have playmakers. You have to have more than one playmaker. And I think that's what hurt Boylan, is that they didn't really have a bevy of playmakers compared to a Guilford. They didn't really have. They had okay line play, but they could have played better. You look at what Guilford did in the second half. Guilford's D line just took over. They had Boylan's linemen, their offensive line. They had the linemen on skates. So Boylan's going to have to get better in that area there, that interior front. And if they can do that and protect Davenport, keep Davenport upright. And get others involved in the passing game, get others involved in the running game, and do what they need to do on defense, play that good, solid, Titan defense. I think Boylan's going to be that team that we could be talking about at that fourth or fifth, maybe that sixth spot, come week 9, come week 10, Harold.
Yeah, I think they have an opportunity because of the way the playoffs, have been kind of topsy-turvy now with, you could have a 2-7, 3-6 team.
Yeah.
Hey, Boylan gets a couple wins, they get some momentum. You never know. They might be able to make it. I mean, crazier things have happened. I'm excited if they get to that point, because I'm just like, I don't like the fact that they're having the extra teams, but if Boylan gets in, hey, that's great. Yeah. That's great for the conference.
And Coach Beard's a great coach. Got to give him credit. What he's been able to inject in that culture over there since he's taken the head coaching job. He's done a really good job of connecting with the players and ensuring that his players understand what the goal is, what's the standard here. And I think he's done a really good job doing that, because a lot of people expected Boylan to come out and not play as well as they played, despite the score, not play as well as they played on Friday night against a really good team as Guilford.
Yeah, and they played hard too the entire game. Even when the score got out of control, they played hard, and they were right. I mean, they were disciplined. They were hard. They played to the whistle. They did everything you would hope a high school football team would do.
Yeah, Coach Beard's a good coach. They took a lot away from this game, and I think they're going to clean some things up, and I don't think they're going to make a lot of those mistakes that they made in week 1 against Freeport. So that'll be a good game to get out to, folks, if you're going that way. Again, Boylan is at Freeport this weekend. Boylan at Freeport. We're going to continue to keep our foot on the gas. We're going to have Freeport. We're going to go to Freeport. Freeport defeats East in season opener. Impressive victory. Freeport 28-0 over East. Harold, I didn't get a chance to get my naked eye on this game, but how impressed were you with the actual outcome of this game? I thought it'd be a little bit closer. I thought East would be able to come out. It's a home game. They're playing in their backyard. They would actually put up more of a fight against a really good Freeport team.
Yeah. So in this one, I was a little surprised that the score ended at 28-0. It was 14-0 after the first quarter, 21-0 at the half, and all scoring ended with 28-0 after the third quarter. So no scoring in the fourth. But it shocked me that East didn't play a little better. I thought that they would be able to compete a little bit more in this game. I'm not sure that they did. I know I have a ton of stats on this game. I know Freeport, they had some nice plays through the passing game. I know they got a nice little quarterback there, and you're going to see it on this play. He's a good player. East, that seems like a breakdown in defense. Again, just from seeing that highlight there. It concerns me that happens in the first game of the season. What's going to happen when you're midway through and maybe you have one win or no wins, right? Like, what's going to happen? And I know East is struggling to get kids in the program too, and that's a reality. They have less than 40 kids in their program, and I'm talking seniors to freshmen. And that's tough. If you're not competing in these games on Friday night, you're going to have a ton of kids sitting in the stands who don't want to put in the work to play. East somehow has to figure out a way to compete in these games. They don't have to win, just compete. Start with that.
And Harold, just to cap on what you're saying, they need to figure it out now. You can't wait till week 4, week 5. You got to figure that out now. Hopefully they learn from their mistakes. I heard there was a lot of mistakes that went on over there with East. So hopefully they can rebound. Hopefully they learn from this game, and they get ready for Jefferson this weekend, because again, playing a really good tough team like Jefferson, East we could end up coming on the show next week and talking. East is now sitting at 0-2. And if East is sitting at 0-2, folks, I'll tell you right now, with the games that they have left on their schedule. It could be a long season for the E-Rabs. So hopefully, they can get out. They have playmakers. They have good players. Again, not sure what went on. Freeport just really came ready to play. I mean, Coach Dedman's done a phenomenal job, over there, in the past, 10 or 11 years that he's been on staff over there as head coach. Coach Dedman always gets his guys ready to play. You can't take anything away from Freeport. Freeport's a damn good football team. 2 years ago, they were in the IHSA playoffs, had a little down season last year, but, I look for Freeport to rebound this year in 2026. I think they're going to be a much more improved team, putting up 28 points against a fairly decent team as East in week 1, putting up those types of points. You got to ask yourself, how much more improved is Freeport this year compared to last year?
Yeah, I think that's going to be, a sign not giving up any points. I think this is going to be kind of the start of the signs as to where Freeport is, right? So East, we know they're struggling. They didn't give up any points. They scored 28 on them. I think that's just one of those games that you look at like, hey, okay, we got everyone. Hopefully we got everyone healthy through that game. Now we move on to the next week in our season so we can move forward and, start to prepare ourselves to make a run at the playoffs. And we're only in week 2.
Yeah, I agree. And again, week 1 is usually tough for a lot of teams. Teams aren't ready yet. But you've had the entire offseason to get ready. I'm not using that as an excuse. I'm not saying that's why East, got thumped by Freeport, but East has to turn it around. I think East will, they'll stay in some games this year, but how many games will they win remains to be seen. Coach Casazza, he knows what he's getting into Friday night. It's going to be a brawl. Coach Grip, he gets his kids ready to play each and every night. The big question this year is, East, you're in the first quarter, but what happened to the second, third, and fourth quarter? So we've seen that from East year in and year out, where East stays in the game for the first quarter, and then second, third quarter, second half, East goes to sleep. So hopefully, we won't see that this year. Hopefully, this was a learning lesson, so to speak, for the E-Rabs, and they get their act together, and they're able to stay in games and get some W's up on the board this year. Because I know the type of players that they have over there. Despite their low numbers, you can still put together a winning program with low numbers. It happens all the time around the country.
Like I said, it starts with competing. For me, it starts with competing. If you got low numbers, you got to compete, and at least stay within a score or two, so you feel like, hey, we're building something. Because we got to remember, East went winless last year. And you're on one this year. You got to start. You got to start somewhere. You got to move forward. Absolutely have to move forward. Take advantage of the skill that they do have.
Agreed. I think they will. East will bounce back. Harold, let's go ahead and get into our Bailey Pod top performers list this year. This in week 1. Here's the list here, Harold. I'm going to let you go ahead and go through the list here real quick. Bailey Pod top performers from week 1. It's all yours.
Yeah, we got at the top spot. Keeson Taylor did a little bit of everything, both offensively and defensively. He had 3 receptions, 56 yards, had a couple of touchdowns, had some nice plays. He had a sack and a half from what I could find. I thought he had more than that, but I think they went down as tackles for loss. So he had a nice game. Grayson Weber, 8 of 12, 192 yards, and 4 big touchdowns to help lead Guilford to the victory over Boylan there. Nick Alvarez, I mentioned his numbers before, 129 yards receiving, 127 yards rushing, 2 punts, and 3 tackles. Just an outstanding game for him. I think his name's going to be on here, if not every week, the majority of the week. Logan Wilson, 7.5 tackles, 7 of those solo for Hananiga against Belvedere on Friday night. LeBron McClellan, he had 113 yards on 7 receptions. He had some nice plays through the air and was able to get a really nice run after the catch along the sidelines to put them inside the 5-yard line, which allowed them to get a touchdown there as well. Tykees Duncan for Harlem had 157 yards rushing. Great job of the offensive line. And Duncan had a 60-yarder as part of that 157 yards. So he did a really nice job.
Impressive.
Really impressive. I was not as familiar with him. He's a little bit of a smallish back. My research said he's about 5'6", 140, but he's got really nice feet. Can get through the hole, catches the ball well out of the backfield. So I think he's a guy where they can move him from the backfield to maybe a slot position, and then they put Foster in the backfield, and they have a lot of pieces there at Harlem, and Duncan is a big piece of that.
Yeah, I was really impressed with him. Go ahead, number 7. Yep.
Oh, I was going to go number 7, Jay Sheck from Jefferson, 10 total tackles, a forced fumble, and he had 2 sacks as well. He continues to play well. He was an all-conference performer last year. He's going to be an all-conference performer this year. So good job by Jace. Antoine Haley, he had a pick 6. He had 4 tackles, 2 pass breakups. So great job by him. And then the last one for Jefferson we're going to highlight is Leslie Thompson. Leslie Thomas, 7 tackles, 2 big sacks, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery for Jefferson that just allowed them to win. As a defense, Jefferson had 22 total yards allowed, 47 passing, and minus 25 rushing. That is a dominating defensive performance. Yep.
Agreed.
If they do that, Tim, they're going to win a whole lot of football games.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep.
Well, congratulations to those guys. Congrats to those guys that made the Bailey Pod top performers list week 1. Folks, we'll always continue to illuminate players in this fashion. You go out, it's a performance-based list, so you go out and you perform. We got our eye on you, so you could be on this list next week. This list will change each and every week, Harold. But I know some of these guys will continue to see on the list as we did last year, week in and week out. So again, the Bailey Pod top performance list from week 1.
As I heard someone say one time, show out and you'll show up. I mean, you show out on Friday night or Saturday,
Agreed.
You're going to show up on this list. That's what's going to happen.
Agreed. So. Agreed. Harold, I just want to before we close here shortly, I just want to highlight a few games next week here, and just get your pick. I'll give you my pick before we close here for the night. Got some exciting games next week. I'm going to go ahead and start with game here. Auburn travels to Hano. What can we expect from this matchup here, Harold?
Well, this is Coach Harris's second game, and I'm betting he learned a ton from last week's game. I think he's going to have his team prepared to play, and I actually think he's going to force Cacciatore to beat him. I think he's going to stack the box defensively and force that passing game for Hononegah, which needs to develop both on the offensive line and out the skill position outside to beat them. I think the Knights have some talent on the outside in their corners and wide receiver positions. I think they match up pretty well against Hononegah.
Right.
I think a lot of people think this is going to be a blowout. I don't think so. I think it's going to be a closer game than we all imagine. I'd expect maybe a 1-score, 2-score type game.
Wow.
Tighter game. I think Auburn is a better football team than they showed up last Friday night.
Right.
Personally, I think the lightning delay really impacted them.
And that's where I'm going next is that, again, I think Auburn's a good football team. It's going to depend on which team shows up on Friday night as they travel to Hononegah. And how tough it is to play in that stadium. So it's a very hostile environment to play in. So, hopefully Coach Harris has his boys ready to go on Friday night. But, I'm going to take in this game here, Harold, I'm going to go with Hononegah in this game. I think, Hononegah's, coming off that big victory from Belvedere. I think, their motto is, we don't, like everybody else, we don't lose at home. And it's going to be interesting to see what type of road team Auburn is this year in 2026. We know what we saw last year. So, are we going to see a repeat of Auburn's road games this year as we saw last year remains to be seen. But I'm going to take Hononegah in this one.
Yeah, I think I'll take Hononegah as well. I don't think Auburn's going to be able to make enough plays to beat them. The interesting thing on Friday night, because I'm actually going to be at this game, I want to see how Auburn reacts if they do get behind by 2 scores. Do they hang their heads and let the steamroll happen right over them, or do they bounce back and fight? I want to see that. Has Coach Harris been able to develop that in this team early in the season? I'm hoping I see it. I'm hoping that I see that. And what I know of Coach Harris, we're probably going to see that. But I want to see. That's a big factor in that one for me.
Sure. Yeah, that'll be an interesting game. We'll keep our eye on that one. Come back next week and illuminate that one for sure. Let's go ahead and move to our next game here. Again, Harlem coming off big win, big win last week at home against Belvedere North, putting up 55 points and holding that Belvedere North dominant run game to 14 points. Harold, Belvedere, coming off a sour taste, big loss over there. They played at home. They played Hononegah, coming off that loss last week to Hononegah. What can we expect, from this game here with these two teams going head to head Friday night?
Boy, I hate to say it. I don't know anybody that's going to compete with Harlem this year. I just think they have so much fuel in the tank. They have so much speed, so much depth. They're getting great quarterback play, great defensive line play. They're attacking from a defensive standpoint and an offensive standpoint. They are attacking the opponent. They've played one game, but we saw it kind of trending that way last year. I don't know how Belvedere is going to be able to put up enough points on the board to compete with Harlem. I hate to say it. I think it's going to be probably, I don't like to give scores, but probably a 4 or 5 score game.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I saw something online where there's a predictor that had it well more than quite a bit more than that. But I think
I'm gonna go ahead and say that Harlem will pull their starters after the first half. That's how bad this one's going to be. I don't see a Belvedere playing close with the dominant team like a Harlem. I just don't. Nothing against, no slight against the Bucks, but I just don't think the Bucks are ready to face a team like this. Not this early in the season. I really don't. So good luck to both teams this weekend. Let's move on, Harold. Boylan Freeport. What do we say about this one? Freeport 1-0, coming off the big victory last week, beating up on East. Boylan coming off sour loss, sour taste in their mouth. They're ready to rinse that sour taste out of their mouth and try to go into Freeport and steal a victory. Harold, what's your thoughts on this one here? Which way can this swing?
I think Freeport takes care of business. I think it's going to be a slow build for them as well, kind of like it was Guilford last week. I don't think the score is going to be the same. I think Freeport wins 35-21, something like that. I think Freeport scores quite a bit, but I think Boylan scores a lot more points than they scored last week. I think they have some parts and pieces that can do some work. They just don't have enough of them right now.
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna roll with the Titans on this one. I think they've learned a lot. In the last week. I think they're going to come out. They're going to be different this week than we saw last week. They're not. Boylan's not a bad team, folks. Despite all the the noise out there, but Boylan's not a bad team. I think they're a much more improved team this year in 2026 compared to last year. I think they're better coached this year than they were last year. And that's in every aspect, not just with the head coach, but I just think they have a really good coaching staff, this year, and that plays a lot. But I think they're going to go into Freeport. I think Boylan's going to steal their first victory this season.
On the road, night. Well, okay, yeah. That'll be interesting. That'll be a big win for them if they get that.
Yep.
If they get that win, I think that's going to be a really big one.
Harold, let's continue to move. Let's go over to Jefferson. Just kind of illuminated this earlier in the show, but East Jefferson, I'm gonna go with Jefferson on this one, Harold. I think the Jayhawks are, they're as they say, as cliche as this may sound, the Jayhawks are flying high, and I think they're gonna take it to East this weekend. Margin of points they'll win by remains to be seen, but I think right now Jefferson's the better football team.
Yeah, I think Jefferson right now is in a better position with their football program, and I think Friday night's going to be no different than we've seen the last few years. I think East is going to struggle in all aspects, and Jefferson seemed to be buttoned up last week. I don't know why this week would be any different. We talked to Kaz earlier in the show. He's got his team ready to roll. He understands the battle that they're going to go up against the East. I think his guys are ready for it. Yeah.
I think I'm going Jayhawks here with that one here. Let's go ahead and move on. Our last one here. Belvedere North at Guilford. If Belvedere North, if they haven't corrected their mistakes, they could get exposed on Friday night, Harold. They could really get exposed. Guilford's a good team this year. I picked Guilford to win the NIC 10. They got a bevy of playmakers on both sides of the ball. They're well coached. So is Belvedere North. But as it pertains to the type of Guilford team I saw last week, what they were able to do in the second half was pretty impressive. And again, we know that Belvedere North doesn't have playmakers that they've been accustomed to having these last 3 to 4 years. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of Belvedere North team comes into Guilford Stadium on Friday night. But as it pertains to my prognostication, I'm gonna go ahead and go with the Vikings. They're at home. They want this game. They're hungry. They feel that they're a NIC 10 championship caliber program, and coming off a big win. I know, obviously they played Boylan. Boylan's still a good team, but are they a really dominant team? No, Boylan's not dominant, but they're a good team. So Guilford's riding high off, going into Titan Stadium, still in that win. Now they're at home in front of their home crowd, expecting a nice crowd. Belvedere North comes to town. I think Guilford's going to win this one. I think they're going to win big.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you there. Guilford, I don't think this one's going to be all that close. I think the final score is going to be very reminiscent of the Boylan-Guilford game last week. I haven't seen enough from North to believe that they have enough to really even threaten a lot of what Guilford does. So if Guilford doesn't kind of sleepwalk through the early part of this game, I think it's going to be over fairly early. And as we mentioned with one of the other games, after halftime, I think starters are probably going to be pulled at some point. And I would be shocked if it's remotely close after halftime.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with you. It's gonna be a fun weekend, man. I think we saw some good ball last weekend. I think we're gonna continue to see some good ball. I know Coach Casazza alluded to earlier. He said in so many words he thought that this year was the year of parity in the conference. So it's from the way he talked. It's kind of like it's open. It's open season. Any team can beat any team. So it remains to be seen. But we know that right now one of the two hot teams right now in the conference are Harlem and Guilford. And I don't think anybody can refute that.
Yeah, no way. Not if you looked at last week's games. Those are the two best teams in the conference. I'd expect them to be running neck and neck until they play each other, and then whoever inches ahead at that point. I think that first of all, that's the game of the year. I think it's going to be the conference championship game, and yeah, I would not expect anything different.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Harold, hey man, thanks for joining the Bailey Pod tonight. Another great show in the books, man. Love always having you on. I know I probably won't run into you this weekend, as we'll be over for our game of the week for the overtime. The assignment is over at Guilford and Belvedere North. Belvedere North comes to town and plays Guilford. So, but we'll stay in touch, Friday night as we always do. But again, Thanks for your time and your expertise. Harold Bone, everybody. Thanks, Harold. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Tim. Be well.
Yeah, folks, I think we're in for a treat this weekend. I think we're going to see some really, really good games. Make sure you guys get out, support your teams. Definitely means a lot when you guys get out, you guys support. So make sure you guys get out and support. Again, you got one big key matchup this weekend, and that is Guilford takes on Belvedere North. Belvedere North travels into Guilford. Folks, well, that's the end of another great show. Again, remember to go subscribe, go like the Bailey Pod. Hopefully we gave you a really great treat tonight. You got full as we did as well. Again, folks, thank you for joining the Bailey Pod. We'll tune in next week with you. Thank you.